Hi, friends. Welcome to week 4 of Nonprofit Leadership and Management. As we begin making our transition to the middle part of the class, I want to bring up the final interview that you will do as a way to begin to hang a lot of the chapter work onto something practical. There's at least 2 concepts that I am wanting to get across to you that are mental models on which you can hang a lot of what we've been talking about. One is the PACE model. The other are logic models. Let me talk about them in order and then talk about a couple of video and PowerPoints I'm going to upload for you this week. The PACE model. Every organization makes a promise to its stakeholders. It may be implicit or it may be explicit. But they say, ladies and gentlemen, we intend to do the most good or deliver a quality hamburger product if you come to our restaurant. But we make this promise that it's going to be affordable, tasty, safe, efficient. We can make all sorts of promises with our brands. And the moment we do, we have entered into a relationship of expectations that people are going to feel their way through. They have a journey experience with the promise that we lay out there to them. And any gap between what you promised and delivered will often be noticed as a moment of truth. Are they really true? Is this really safe? Is this the most affordable? Is this efficient? Is it quality? People ask questions like that. If you've ever had a customer service moment where you got the bag of French fries and they were cold, that's one of those moments of truth that you come back and say, is there any way I could get some warm ones? You folks usually promise warm ones. Well, your organization has some implied promises that it's making to your constituents, its stakeholders. Those could be board members, they could be staff members, they could be the executive team, there could be the Salvation Army itself. It could be folks in a disaster situation. It could be your partners with the Red Cross or the Red Crescent. You can find yourself with all of these stakeholders and they want to know that you're going to deliver your part of the bargain, your part of the deal. So the PACE model allows you to know if your system is doing what it says it does by providing 4 managerial priorities. P, the program. If your program is, we intend to deliver food to the sick and shut-ins, or you care about the sick and shut-ins in your neighborhood, then delivering food may be a program that you design to alleviate that social situation. And once you promise that you're going to be delivering food on Thursday afternoons, an entire system will develop around that called the program, its standards, its times, those sorts of things. Then the A box will be the assignments. People will be assigned to align their behaviors with what was promised in the program. We will need capital. That's the C box. We need cash and investment. We need computers and vans and ovens, a commercial oven. We need food handler's license. We need a bunch of stuff, capital, that gets thrown at the promise of alleviating hunger by delivering food through our program. And then last, evaluation. That's your feedback loop. That's your learning loop. That's where you hear back from those folks who've received the food and saying, the food always comes cold. Or there's always peanuts in the food and I signed on the paper that I'm allergic to peanuts. And that kind of feedback will let you know there's some sort of gap somewhere in your execution system, your fulfillment system. And when you collect that sort of data, you can go back to the program design and ensure that food is, that we sequence things so food is delivered hot, that we sequence things so that folks with certain special diets receive what they're looking for. We make sure that folks who have those assignments know what the assignments are and how the behavior has to change. We buy different food or notify folks that because we only received peanuts this month and many of our folks are allergic to peanuts, we will not be serving a dessert this month. But you would notify them in some sort of way. This shows a complete system. So I'm going to upload a video for you called High Fidelity Organizations, Hi-Fi Organizations, and talk through this fulfillment system using the PACE model, and I'll supply a PowerPoint that goes along with that. Now, logic models. A logic model is similar to the PACE model that I talked through. I talked through things in a logical way because when we make a promise, things begin to happen in a sequenced sort of way. And again, if you have ever worked with United Way or foundations or grantors, they'll often ask you, how do you know that there's going to be a change through what you do? And the only way to answer is our theory of change can be demonstrated by the sequence that we do certain things. Many of you may know that I was a strategy officer for a nonprofit here in the United States for a couple of years recently. And we discovered something in our logic model as it pertained to the nutrition of children below the age of 2. We had a feeding program that was for children from all ages, but we discovered something about the developmental stages of little bodies. That if little bodies before age 2 don't get certain nutrients, they could be irreparably damaged or harmed or experience deficiencies. There's certain nutrients they need before age 2 that has to be a part of their diets, or weak legs, weak systems, weak lungs, these things occur. Now, we had been feeding families for 2 or 3 years prior to learning this thing about children. Were we doing malpractice? Was Jesus not pleased with us? No, that's not the question at all. But at the moment that our feedback system told us there was something to know about the developmental stage of children, we needed to adjust our programming. We needed to assign people to understand these contingencies better. We needed to get different capital or investors who would help us purchase some of these nutritions and vitamins. And then we needed to see, did their weights change? Did their performance change? Their bodily performance measurements change? So that ultimately they can keep up in school and they can think clearly and they have less stress disorders. That's how a logic system showed us that we had a gap in the delivery of our programs. Just because we deliver things on time every day the same way doesn't mean that we're doing something that's actually moving the neighborhood process forward for transformation. The logic model can be explained in this way. I'll use a chocolate cake, for example. If you're going to make a chocolate cake, you'll take a bunch of stuff out of your pantry, cocoa and flour and sugar and butter and all those things, those goodies that go into a chocolate cake. And on the other end, you're going to want hungry people, for people who want a dessert, you're going to want them with smiling faces, happy, and their bodies changed, hopefully for the better. In order to get there, you're going to have to go through a logical process. You'll take all of this input called chocolate and eggs and butter and sugar. You'll sequence some behaviors called put wet ingredients over here, put dry ingredients here, mix them together with exactly 30 strokes, put it in a cake pan, set 350. There's a whole series of behaviors you would follow that if you followed them differently, now put it in the refrigerator, leave it out so that flies can get it. If those were part of your behaviors, you would probably get a different kind of result as the chocolate cake and these smiling faces. But if you follow it the way that it shows up in cookbooks all over the world, you're probably showing that your theory of change matches what people expect from chocolate cakes. So you got inputs, you've got a sequence of activity that matches your theory of change. Then there will be an output. At some point, 2 pans of brown cake, breadish material will come out of the pan. It will be hot. It will weigh 12 ounces. There are things you can do measurement-wise to say, this is the nature of the outputs from our programming called chocolate cake program. But what are chocolate cakes for? For counting? For measuring, for naming the color? For measuring their size and weights? Unfortunately, many of the annual reports that nonprofit organizations publish end right there. We fed 900 children. We bedded down 600 homeless. We hired 16 new volunteers. And we do a bunch of counts and report those things. And there is a celebration to have gotten that far. But if we don't know that this is about people eating chocolate cake so that they can have happy lives and be satisfied in their tummies, then describing the fact of chocolate cake to hungry people is malpractice and it's unkind. We go the next step and we make the distinction between outputs and outcomes. A smiling face is an outcome. A warm body that's been filled with dessert is an outcome. A community that knows it's going to be well with them because food arrives in satisfactory ways, even with dessert, becomes an outcome. Somebody cares for us is an outcome. So knowing why we make chocolate cakes relates to the feedback that we ultimately have. Did our chocolate cake program deliver the kind of satisfaction that we want for a neighborhood or for a congregation or a community or for a staff? Your logic model tells you if that's happening or not. So I'm going to upload a couple of videos and a little bit of documentation that'll help you understand these two a little bit better. And I think it's a good way of hanging the course on that final interview. As you know, I reorganized the reading so that they follow under the PACE model. Maybe you're not aware of that, but if you look in the syllabus, you'll see that the first parts of your reading were focusing on the P stuff like marketing and program delivery. Then there's the A stuff. That's all the personnel, the board, the executive, the staff, the leadership stuff. Then there's the C stuff, your financial paperwork, your profit and loss statements, all those conversations. And then there's all the evaluation stuff. I reorganized the class so it falls under the mental model of the PACE model. And now we're going to bring these two things together. So as we move into this fourth week, I want you to be very conscious of how PACE is a part of our conversation, and how logic models is a way for you to talk about your theory of change. I look forward to seeing more of what you're writing and thinking in the classroom. Let's go give them some love.